Hello and welcome back everybody to the Foodbuild factory, where today we're going to take a look at Fury Fuzzy. That's the guy you can see on screen right now. And as always, I'm going to show you some gameplay in the first part of the video, and in the second part of the video we're going to take a look at the perks, mutations, equipment and everything else that makes this character. Now let's get right into it. This character is a bit straightforward. Now we're going to play as a power armor heavy gunner, so nothing all that much out of the ordinary here. For those of you who know the game, and I guess pretty much all of you, yeah, heavy gunners in power armor are definitely a good character class. There's no big surprise here, and the more specialized thing that we're looking into here is, first and foremost, the weapon we're using is a furious, faster fire rate, faster reload minigun. I just found that combination of legendary effects oddly satisfying, and the first thing that's special about this build is something you already saw like a few seconds ago, which is the very fast reload speed, which isn't exactly something you'd actually expect from a heavy gunner. Typically you'd expect that, well, you have a high ammo capacity, but on the offhand you do actually take a lot of time to reload, which just isn't the case here. We'll show it here. See, it's something like 2 seconds or so, and we are able to shoot again. Now, I wanted to use this weapon because, as I said, I found it very satisfying, and it actually is, from the top of my head, probably the fastest firing weapon I ever used in this game. I think it's somewhere at 255 fire rate. Now, I'm pretty sure there could be faster firing weapons, especially with the faster fire rate legendary effect, but overall, well, we're overweight. Just dropped that suppressor scattling laser. Wasn't good anyways. But overall, this is definitely very fast fire rate. Obviously, we're going to burn through a lot of resources, especially ammo here. So one thing, and that would probably be the more sensible option here, would be to go for the dry barrel for the minigun, which lowers your fire rate but increases your damage. I guess this would probably be the most efficient way to utilize this weapon, for the simple fact that, yeah, the usual downside to dry barrel, the lower fire rate, is made up, at least by a bit, due to the fact that we have the faster fire rate attachment, and overall we can utilize the higher damage more. But I really wanted to double down on this occasion on this extremely fast fire rate, simply because it synergizes very well all together. The fast fire rate, fast reload and everything. And the Furious effect is something I haven't really shown off all that much on this channel here. And the Furious effect is, in my opinion, one of the most straightforward perks in the game. And yet again, I made the mistake to... yeah, sure. Lock my whole screen, please. I made the mistake to take up a heavy weapon. So you can see we are relatively fast over encumbered, but the problem is I didn't bother to give myself calibrated shocks on the power armor. So keep in mind, we could have easily 100 more carry weight capacity, so that shouldn't be any problem whatsoever. Okay, there's another wolf. And as you can see, once we can really see our targets and focus on them, yeah, they're dropping very fast. Now, back to the Furious effect. It's one of those effects that on paper looks really good. It also was very good in Fallout 4 on certain weapons. Now, the weapons that are most beneficial with this legendary effect haven't really changed. You still want to have a high fire rate weapon with low base damage. So basically how the effect works is for every consecutive hit on the same target, meaning that if you don't hit another target in between, you get 5% more damage, more base damage, clocking out at something like 45%, I think. So after 9 or 10 shots on the same target, you're basically seeing the maximum effect on the weapon. And that's nothing to be coughed at. That's basically pretty much on par with things like junkies or berserkers. but you don't have any downside to it. The only downside you have is that, as I said, you do actually have to hit your target multiple times, but with such a high fire rate weapon like this one here, that's not a problem. You're there in basically a second or so. As you can see here, we're firing like 20 shots at those guys, so this can go very fast. And after all, on those enemies where you don't see the full effect, you don't need it actually, simply because, yeah, if they're dropping so fast, yeah, okay, you may spare 2 or 3 bullets if you would have the effect from the beginning, but after all, this character is here to burn resources actually, so 5mm is easy to craft in high amounts, and yeah. I do see we have a bit of a bad behavior from the Scorch Beast here. We can actually cripple his limbs, but still, it seems that it doesn't really want to land today. We can quickly check. Okay, the left wing is completely intact. The right wing is broken though. Now he landed, and I guess we can completely take him down now. Provided we hit him and don't hit the tree. But as you can see here, once it's landed, there's no real problem here killing the thing. Really getting very heavy legendary drops. Like, what was this? 3 heavy weapons within 5 minutes or so? Another thing to mention about the weapon, which I didn't do so far, is that people seem to have a problem with the spin-up time, which is a thing on multiple heavy weapons in this game. Think about the Gatling Plasma or the Gatling Laser. They both do have the same problem. I get where this comes from. It's definitely a bit tedious, but you actually kind of grow into it. Using such a weapon for a longer time, you really start to understand or get a feeling for it, and actually it's not that big of a deal, in my opinion at least. I even quite like the fact that you have the spin-up time. It adds a bit of character to the weapons, but yeah, that's ultimately personal preference. If that's something you can live with, then yeah, sure, use something else. Now, very obviously, this build we're using here would work with basically every single heavy weapon in the game, so that shouldn't be any surprise. You can also go with energy heavy weapons. I just wanted to utilize this one here. Now, we even boost our fire rate a bit higher by using the accelerated barrel, which I think it looks a bit ridiculous if we take a look at it. It's just a bit too short in my opinion compared to the... I don't know, it's not a drum, I'm not sure how it's called on the minigun, but you know, the magazine or whatever. It looks a bit ridiculous compared to the short barrel, but as I said, I really want to go down that really fast fire rate road. And another thing that is kind of surprising with the minigun, at least in my opinion, is how accurate it actually is. Now obviously we're getting an accuracy boost from stabilized, since we're using power armor and we are using stabilized, there would be no good reason not to do so. But even without, the minigun, it was the same in Fallout 4, is surprisingly accurate. Now you're limited by the range of this thing, especially with the accelerated barrel. The range isn't all that great. You saw that when we were targeting the Scorch Beast while it was in the air. That was just to cripple its limbs a little bit, so we were gonna force it to land, but you can't really expect high damage numbers over range. But from close to mid-range, it's actually really easy to manage the recoil of the weapon, and the weapon is very precise. So that's something I found very enjoyable using the weapon, since you can really utilize headshots and so on. And this is definitely one of the characters I do kind of enjoy in first person. In general, I know some people don't like the HUD of the power armor in this game. I really do like it though. Gives you the feel to be in a tank actually. I do just enjoy it. And especially with such a heavy weapon, you really feel like you're in a mechanic suit just by the way you're holding the weapon. You're holding the weapon pretty much the same if you're outside of power armor, but I just think it feels better if you're utilizing it in power armor, if that makes sense. Now we're going to fast travel to Huntersville, just to show off how we're killing some super mutants. The rest of the journey it's pretty much set. We're going through the Blood Eagles camp, then kill the Deathclaw on the cliff, jump down, and I guess on this occasion we've been through pretty fast, so we're gonna clear out the Westtech exterior as well, and then we're going to take a look at the perks. There's not a whole lot to say about this build anymore. As I said, it's quite resource heavy, simply because you're burning through a ton of 5mm ammo, but sometimes being wasteful just is fun in this game. I don't know about you, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend this build as a first playthrough build, simply because you're spending a lot of time just farming resources. But especially 5mm ammo is something you just stock up over time if you're a hoarder like me. Like I had, I think it was 60,000 5mm ammo lying in my stash box. And even though the ammo is relatively lightweight, it just stacks up because it's a lot. And yeah, I just wanted to use it for once. And another thing we're burning through a little bit here is Stim Packs. We do have two different, one perk and one modification that gives us a Stim Pack automatically. So we never have to worry about our health actually, we just have to keep a little bit of a supply of Stim Packs with us. We are obviously relatively tanky due to the fact that we are in power armor, first and foremost, and yet again I picked up a heavy legendary. So yeah, first and foremost we are in power armor, which automatically gives us quite a lot of damage reduction and a good damage resistance and energy resistance. Then on top of that we do have the legendary perk Absorption. Is it Absorption? The one that basically makes energy enemies redundant, actually heals you. So we are quite tanky. On top of that we do have relatively high endurance, so we have a good amount of HP. So overall, it's not like we're burning through Stim Packs in an enormous rate, but simply the fact that we don't have to look for our health means that you find yourself automatically just not caring about cover and so on. So you can just walk into pretty much every single situation, face tank everything, and yeah, shoot it. It's a very laid-back approach, not think a lot. Just stock up on the ammo and the Stim Packs before you're going into a fight, and then you can basically relax while playing the game. It's very easy mode. You can also top that if you're just not using a Furious version, but using a Vampires version, then you're probably pretty much invincible. Now, another thing you could easily do with this build here is use a Shredder modification, something that works extremely well with the minigun nowadays. You can also use it without any bits of ammo and just use it as a melee weapon, basically. I just didn't want to do that. First and foremost, I don't really like the Shredder modification in terms of how it looks, for the most part. I'm not sure what it is, but yeah, I just don't like it all that much. And other than that, yeah, basically the way the Shredder modification functions at the moment, it's pretty much more viable to use the Shredder modification and bash enemies with it than to use the weapon itself. So yeah, I just wanted to use the minigun as I'm doing here during the video, and overall I had a lot and a ton of fun with this build. Now, another thing I quite enjoyed is I definitely wanted to utilize the new Mr. Fuzzy helmet for the power armor that recently came into the item shop, which is one of the more interesting cosmetics so far. I did quite enjoy it. I mean, obviously it's not lore friendly or anything, but who cares with the item shop, right? And yeah, overall it made for a pretty good aesthetic in my opinion. We're using the Hellfire power armor arms. I think it's the Hellfire paint, and the rest is just blue T51B power armor. So nothing out of the ordinary here, but it works quite well in my opinion, gives us quite a colorful combination. Now, one thing that would be more vanilla if you don't have access to the other skins, I guess the Quantum paint for the XO1 would work very well. Now here you also saw, let's show that off again, just have to shoot some. The reload in third person is relatively ridiculous. you really see that you're breaking the animation a bit because it's just going too fast. It looks a bit silly, but very enjoyable. Now, obviously, we don't have to worry all that much about suiciders. They're basically a joke the moment you have fireproof on. And yeah, one obvious thing I didn't mention so far, but I think you can already tell, is you should really focus on individual enemies so you don't lose the legendary effect. But on the other hand, especially with enemies that are usually coming in bigger groups, ghouls and so on, yeah, the simple fact that you have faster fire rate gives you such a high DPS that usually, yeah, as I said, if I'm fighting ghouls or so on, I don't really bother too much with focusing on individual enemies. You can just spray and pray, pretty simply. Another good version of this weapon would obviously be an explosive version. Always works quite nice with heavy weapons and high fire rate, but I just felt like I wanted to use this one. Was really happy when it dropped for me, so therefore it was about time to make a build about Furious Effect. And yeah, that was basically it in terms of the gameplay. I hope you did enjoy it. Overall, I mean, showing off heavy gunners is nothing too spectacular because, as I said, they are generally pretty good builds. You don't need a lot of effort to make them work, so therefore I don't show them off very often. However, every now and then I do just enjoy to use one and show it off, and it's more about aesthetics in this situation. So here it was, Fury Fuzzy, and now we're going to take a look at the rest of the build, the more interesting part even, I guess. So let's just start with our mutations here. We do have Adrenal Reactions, Burnt Bones, Carnivore, Eagle Eyes, Marsupial, and Speed Demon. Now, one thing straightforward, Carnivore and Eagle Eyes are leftovers from another build, so you don't need them in any way. Carnivore, well, just gives you better buffs from meat, most importantly, which we don't really utilize here. And Eagle Eyes, if anything, is just a debuff to us on this occasion, because we're not utilizing Perception in any way, nor do we use VETs in order to use crit damage, so yeah. Eagle Eyes is completely pointless and just debuffs our strength, so keep in mind you would have a bit more carry weight regardless if you're just not using that. And Carnivore, well, if you want to use it, but there's no real preference here, in my opinion, for Carnivore or Herbivore, so just leave that out as well. Adrenal Reaction, I decided for it for the simple reason that since we're not actively using Stim Packs, but rather wait till they are automatically used at 30% health, Adrenal Reaction is working a lot of the time during our fights. Now, we're never really going into the realm where we take full advantage of it, but if you look at the HUD at the moment, we're currently at around 70%, and that's something you find yourself often with. Like 70-60% health is something during fights that happens a lot, and after all, that's still a bit of extra damage from Adrenal Reaction. And the debuff to our HP, as I said, we do have relatively high endurance, so we can definitely afford to have such a debuff here. So overall, I thought it was kind of useful here, but feel free to not use it. It's definitely not important here. Overall, you will see that this build here is using relatively little in a way of mutations. We do have Bird Bones. Now, the extra agility isn't all that important for us on this occasion. I took it for one simple fact, and that is, if you're playing in power armor, I find it kind of... yeah, it's kind of frustrating if you're jumping a lot with the Marsupial mutation, and if you're not using Bird Bones, if you're jumping even off a little ledge, you very often have this stagger animation, you know, when you're landing with the power armor from a certain height and you make the superhero landing, which just takes a little bit of time and it can be really unnerving, in my opinion. I don't like it. And with Bird Bones, you can really significantly reduce the amount of times that this happens. So therefore it's here. But yet again, personal preference. If you feel okay with having this little stagger every now and then, just don't use it. We don't actually use the agility for anything, so feel free to do so. Now, another thing here is Marsupial, which is pretty much on every single build of mine. The debuff to intelligence definitely is a bit of a bummer, but extra jump height and carry weight never hurt, so it's just a staple on pretty much every build you will find. There's rarely any build that not uses Marsupial. And lastly, we do have Speed Demon here. Pretty straightforward yet again. More movement speed, it's just convenient, and the reload speed, you could argue that we don't really need it on this occasion simply because we do have faster reload as a legendary effect, and you will see we have the lock and loaded perk in a minute that also increases our reload speed. But since we already try to really go all in on that occasion, yeah, might as well swap in Speed Demon here. It doesn't hurt. After all, all the debuff that it has is that you're getting hungry and thirsty more quickly, and we neither need the AP refresh buff from being well hydrated, nor do we really need the extra HP from being well fed. So therefore, yeah, just go with it. A lot of talk for little mutations, so now let's get into the equipment here. We do have a Furious, faster fire rate, faster reload, high-speed minigun here. As I said, we do have the accelerated barrel. Now I put on the gunner sights. Since we're not using VATS or anything, you can definitely live without it. Would certainly make the weapon a bit lighter. But on the other hand, I find that yeah, it really feels like you can aim a little bit better with it, and after all, if you tend to aim a lot, use it, otherwise you can definitely live without it. I just put it on here, no muzzle, since the only available option would be the shredder here, and we're going with the standard appearance. As you can see here, yeah, I was quite right if when I was recalling the fire rate, it's 255, which is really off the top of my head, I can't remember any weapon that has a higher one that I used personally. The range, yeah, as you see, 120, not as much, but it's okay. And the accuracy definitely is pretty low, but as I said, I find it pretty good. Now, two noticeable things here. In terms of ammo, we started the video with around 46,000 rounds, just so you have a little bit of an idea of how much we have burned through. Yeah, 6k, or 5k rather. So definitely a lot of ammo we burned through in such a low time, but on the other hand, it's 5mm, so who cares. And lastly, the condition, it's okay on this weapon. Now, you will see in a minute that we're actually using Gunsmith, so our weapon breaks slower, but overall you can live without it. I just found it convenient and wanted to have relatively high intelligence. And in terms of armor, it's quite simple. The only two pieces of our power armor that are modified are the torso with a medical pump, which gives us a which injects us with a Stim Pack if we are dropping down to 20% health. Now this we were going to utilize very little. I'm explaining that when I'm getting to it. And the other thing we do have here is a sensor array on the helmet, which gives us more perception, and we actually don't use that in any way. It's just it was on the power armor that I was using, so I went for it. If you really want to go for a specific modification, I'd go with the one that increases your intelligence, but after all, there's nothing you desperately need here. And the rest isn't modified. For the arms, I wouldn't even know what you put here. There's nothing we really need. One thing I'd obviously do would be to utilize calibrated shocks on the legs. It's just something I didn't bother with for this video. So keep in mind, even though we're currently edging in terms of our carry weight, yeah, you can easily get that up to 310. So there shouldn't be any problem. And now let's get into the perks. You will see here we have strength at 15. Now, there was an argument for me. I initially wanted to go down to 14 and use heavy gunner perks, as you can see here, the bandolier perk and lock and loaded. Heavy gunner perks, pretty self-explanatory. We want to get more damage out of our weapons, so they are there. Bandolier, as I said, this is a build that burns through a lot of ammo, so I really wanted to have bandolier on me, just because I wanted to carry a lot of ammo. Now, I said it in the beginning of the video, the 5mm ammo is relatively lightweight, but still it adds up, and therefore, yeah, bandolier doesn't hurt. And now we do have lock and load. Now, if you want to make a change, this would be the first perk you could definitely leave out here and use something else. Use Blocker for more tankiness, Pain Train, Traveling Pharmacy, or even Bare Arms. I just wanted to use it simply because I wanted to double down or triple down actually on the reload speed, just because I found it fun. But ultimately, yeah, 3 perk points for just a little bit more reload speed, since we're already reloading so fast, it's arguably wasted. I just found it fitting with the whole vibe of the build, but feel free to use something else here. And yes, as I said, I wanted to use 14 strength here, but ultimately I found myself over encumbered, and I thought 1 rank of Traveling Pharmacy isn't all that bad. As I shown during the video, our build is very capable of using chems without getting addicted, so you maybe want to have quite a decent array of chems with you just to boost your damage a little bit in situations where it's necessary or convenient. And as I said, you want to have a little bit of a supply of Stim Packs on you, which can weigh you down. And even rank 1 of Traveling Pharmacy, I found, makes quite a big difference. So therefore, I left my strength at 15 ultimately and went for rank 1 of Traveling Pharmacy. Perception is at 1. We can't go lower. There's nothing we need it for. I went for 1 rank of Concentrated Fire for the simple reason that we can check limbs of enemies and see if they are crippled already. Now, on most enemies, it's pretty easy to see. Talking about sheep squatches, ghouls, or so on. If you cripple their limbs, you will see that. The main use for this here perk is actually to see, as I did earlier with Scorch Beast, you shoot at them for a little while, try to aim at the wings, and then you can check with Concentrated Fire if the limbs are crippled, and if not, you can target on those individual ones. So that's all it's here for. If you really don't want to bother with that, go with 1 rank of Glow Sight or Exterminator or something. I'm sure you find something. Then Endurance, as I said, relatively high at 11. We do have Life Giver for more HP, basically offsetting our debuffs from the Adrenal Reaction Mutation. Then we do have Chem Fiend at rank 2. Now, this would have been the 1 perk point that I wouldn't have used for Traveling Pharmacy initially, and I would have just made Chem Fiend rank 3. Pretty straightforward, just more time from your chems. Like, if you're using them, you can have the benefit for a bit of a longer time. Most of the times, though, you just want to use them for bosses or so on, and therefore, yeah, you don't need a whole lot of supplies. So yeah, rank 2 is enough for me. And chem resistant, this is just convenient. It's not like Addictal is anywhere in short supply or something, so you can definitely live without it. I just wanted to have it so I don't have to care using whatever I like. Psycho buff tends to be the one chem I'm using the most. All the buffs we get from it are basically beneficial to us, like strength, okay, that's just a bit of carry weight, but extra endurance, extra maximum hit points, and extra damage, that's all nice for our playstyle. So, and on top of that, Psycho buff seems to be pretty abundant, so abundant, I'm not sure, there's a lot of it. So, yeah, chem resistant, pretty straightforward. And lastly, we do have fireproof. Not a lot to talk about here. You want to basically just remove the risk of getting killed by explosive cars, super mutant suiciders, and on top of that, yeah, you're basically making the scream attacks from Scorch Beast redundant. So pretty easy. Then there's something you not really see all that often on my characters, and which is charisma higher than 7. Now 7 is basically the most I ever do. On this occasion I do have charisma 9. Lone Wanderer, bit more tankiness, bit more AP regen, but other than with a lot of the other builds, it's not really necessary here, so you can easily go with something else and turn this into a more group-orientated character. Think about stuff like strange numbers and so on, but nothing necessary here. The more important things, Tenderizer synergizes very well with our high fire rate. After all, our first initial shot doesn't do a whole lot. It's a combination of a lot of shots that we're taking that makes our damage. So Tenderizer works perfectly here, giving us additional 10% damage which are actually still multiplicative, so additional was kind of the wrong term on this occasion, so very beneficial here. And then we have rank 2 of Field Surgeon, which synergizes very well with First Aid that we have here in Intelligence. High Intelligence at rank 14, so definitely something you can use to level up relatively comfortably. And the combination of First Aid and Field Surgeon really helps us make this character so careless during battles. Now, something you will see here on the right, now we're switching just one more. Born Survivor at rank 2 means that if our health drops to 30% health, we automatically use a Stim Pack every 20 seconds. Once that happens, we do have First Aid, meaning that even with a normal Stim Pack, we basically heal all our health back. And combine that with Field Surgeon, this happens very fast. So you don't have to care a whole lot. If somehow you're facing an enemy that still outdamages your healing, we will have the medic pump that I shown off earlier as a second fail-safe. So even if an enemy outdamages the healing from a Stim Pack, yeah, there will be another one. So basically, I can't really imagine a situation where you die. I never once died using this character. I think it could be very hard. Maybe if you have multiple Gutsies with armor penetration, or what could definitely happen is in the newer daily ops, if the enemies have their armor penetration mutation and they gang up on you, that could possibly lead to a death. But other than that, you really are quite invincible. Stabilized, I touched on it during the gameplay part of the video, pretty straightforward. You won't find any power armor heavy gunner character that doesn't use stabilized. More accuracy and more armor penetration are just pure beneficial and way too good not to use it. Basically, it's the main reason why you rarely see heavy gunners outside of power armor. So there's that. Stabilized. Batteries included, pretty straightforward here. First and foremost, I had a lot of intelligence planned for this character, just because I often have relatively low intelligence and I wanted to make a smarter one for once. And after all, I'm carrying a ton of fusion cores, over 100 or so. So yeah, batteries included, very straightforward here, just reducing the weight of our energy ammo. So use it if you want. If you don't need it, find something else. Nerd Rage as a last failsafe, but that would be overkill, I guess. So I'm sure we find something. Power User would probably be a good idea. And lastly, as I said during the video, we do have Gunsmith here. Yeah, as I said, the weapon is okay in terms of condition. It doesn't burn through it too quickly, but using Gunsmith isn't the most bad idea in this occasion. Just doubling the amount of time you can shoot your weapon before you have to reload it. And that leaves us with 8 luck here, which we use for One Gun Army, Ricochet, and Starched Jeans. So Starched Jeans, straightforward. We don't want any unnecessary mutations, and we want to have keep the ones that we have. So therefore, it's there. Ricochet, just giving us a little bit more of in terms of tankiness. There's no well synergizing here, like you see with other weapon effects, like vampires, for example. So it's really just a flat-out 18% damage reduction from ranged attacks, basically. And yeah, One Gun Army, pretty straightforward. You get the chance to stagger an enemy or cripple him, which would also stagger him. And this is especially beneficial if you're fighting bosses. With such a high fire rate like this one, the 12% chance doesn't really matter, because yeah, you will easily fire 100 shots at the enemy within a few seconds. So therefore, it works very well on this occasion. As you can see, Vault Boy even carries a minigun. And lastly, last thing we're going to look at here are the legendary perks. Those are pretty straightforward as well. Now we do have 1 luck, 2 legendary intelligence, and 2 legendary strength, so not a lot to talk about this. Gives me just a little bit more perk points to use, so I'm sure 5 perk points you could spare somewhere, going down a little bit when it comes to endurance and intelligence, and you're already there. Now, the most powerful one for this build is probably Electric Absorption. As I shown during the video when the Assault one was fighting us, yeah, basically enemies with, especially with high fire rate energy weapons, They heal you, they charge your fusion core, and you're basically invincible as long as they fire at you. Then we do have Funky Dots at rank 2. We're using a full set of T51 power armor, so therefore we get the benefit. 100 poison resistance really works out well, meaning that if we're fighting with a Mirelurk Queen or legendary Mirelurk Kings, yeah, it just reduces a lot of risk of dying over time, or we're not dying from it probably, but we would certainly run through a bit more of Stim Packs, so it just adds to the tanky nature. And lastly, Ward Rats is pretty convenient on this character, meaning that if you are in a nuke zone, you don't have to care for using a rat away every now and then. And also, if you're fighting ghouls or so on, yeah, you just never have that annoying little red bar in your health bar. So, yeah, that's it basically. Now, I really hope you enjoyed the video. As I said, I'm sometimes having a hard time deciding if I really want to go down with a heavy gunner, because I find it a bit hard to make the videos exciting. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Heavy gunners certainly feel very samey in a lot of cases, but I felt like this one really has a unique feel if you're playing with it, and there's certainly some kind of enjoyment just from burning resources and just don't giving a fuck for once. Like, I personally, I'm not sure if it is the same with you, but I often play this game and really am ammo conservative and don't want to waste stuff, and that's not necessary in this game. I mean, like, we're all swimming in resources, so just burning resources for once can be fun. That's all I wanted to say. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, guys, and see you next time. I'm pretty sure I'm going to do another video even today, so see you then, guys. Bye.